comments before Sarah starts anyway. So I want to remind people that we're going to be captioning this Zoominar. So please speak slowly enough so that Allison can keep up on the simultaneous typing for the captions. I think most of you know that this is one in a series of online webinars, which I call Zoominars, and that CERV has several others that are also now archived on the CERV website. So if you have missed any of them, we have a webinar that Wanda Vollmer, who's on right now, did for us on the basics. Another one that Wanda did on emergency communication and health passports. Another version of that emergency and communication and health passports in Spanish. And then we have references to a number of the webinars and courses that some of the other nonprofits here in Monterey County have also archived on their websites. So I'd now like to introduce our speakers today. Elsa Quezada was supposed to be speaking, but Elsa is ill. So I just want to acknowledge Elsa's contribution. Elsa, until recently, was the executive director of the Central Coast Center for Independent Living, and is now primarily a consultant, I believe. And then we also have Sarah Blackstone. Sarah is a world-renowned expert, unfortunately, in a different subject than emergency readiness, but she also is well-versed in emergency readiness and is the mover and shaker of CERV. CERV, for those of you who don't know, is a Monterey County organization that works not just in emergency readiness, but in emergency response, primarily by supporting local CERT, community emergency response training organizations around the county, and in recovery, primarily by maintaining a web portal called recovers.org, which enables individuals who are victims of various emergencies and disasters to come on and request various kinds of support, a lot of it being money, rent, et cetera. And then CERV has raised funds to provide support for those people and also gets people to donate items that individuals or organizations need in the aftermath of disasters. So now I'll just turn it over to Sarah Blackstone, and I know she has some guests as well that she'll introduce. So Sarah, take it away.
Thank you, Harvey, and thanks everybody for coming, and let's have a good time. The goals for this Zoominar, wait, let me get where I'm supposed to be. We're going to point you to some resources that many of you know about and that are helpful and help people stay informed, do a go bag, know how to stay put, know how to make and practice emergency preparedness plans, be ready to evacuate, and stay in touch with people in their lives, their neighbors. And so we're going to point you to some resources, but basically we're not going to organize this webinar like that. We're going to pay special attention to areas that look at issues that people with disabilities and access and functional needs may face. Each of those individuals is going to be different, and many people will face all of these areas. So we're using a different framework that we'll be talking about. So we've decided not to review information that we know is available in other places and has been done before, but we're going to focus on people with disabilities, access and functional needs, and what are the what ifs that they have to think about, and how realized that they have to think about to maintain their access to communication, to health, to be able to remain independent, safe, and get the supports they need, and then remain mobile. So we're going to start with a video that is of Big Sur Kate, and she's a well-known personality in the Monterey County. And we're starting with her because she is a woman with a disability. Many of you may not know that. And she's making a huge difference. And this is all about resilience.
My name is Kate Navoa. I'm also known as Big Sur Kate because of a blog I've been running for the last 10 years. I was in an automobile accident, and that resulted in the loss of my leg above the knee. But I think primarily who I am is I'm a Big Sur person who is in love with where I live, in love with my community, and in love with what it all represents, the magical aspects of Big Sur. In 2000, I was here by myself with 4 dogs, and I was working on my computer when this friend of mine came up to my front door with eyes like saucers and said, "Have you looked outside?" And I had not, and then I did, and there was smoke and flames and everything coming towards where I was. I tell you, Jerry and Rocky were probably the most help because they had been through it the year before and they knew what to tell me to take. Bedding, dog food, dogs, photo albums, all the things that they lost. You know, everybody says you should have your important papers packed. No, all of your important papers can be replaced, but not your photo albums. At that time I was wearing my leg. I had the artificial leg, so it was much easier. If I was in a wheelchair, it would have been a little bit difficult, but harder, but I try to anticipate, plan, but on the other hand, you have to be, especially in Big Sur, extremely flexible. You have to be able to think on your feet, be able to change direction. I thought ahead of what I was going to need while I was able to do it. The Basin Fire Complex started in June of 2008, and so that night, actually July 4th, I spent the day and the entire night learning how to blog. And that's when I realized, okay, having a voice like that would make a difference. I can see almost all of Big Sur, and I feel an obligation because of that to give back to my community. And the fire service people have become like counting on me to let them know what was going on in certain places that they couldn't get information from anyone else. Because frankly, I'm faster than most of the organizations out there because of what I can see. I think the best thing was when 2 Forest Service guys stopped to help me change my tire. Brian and Brian. Spelt differently, but both Brian and Brian. And so I asked them permission to take their picture. And so I took their picture and I posted it on my blog. And then I get a note from one of the Brian's mother. It was his birthday that day, his 21st birthday, and his mother was missing him and wanted to see him on his birthday. And through my blog, she got to see him. So that kind of is, I still kind of tear up over that one. So anyway, that kind of, I realized that the fire service community, the larger one in particular, their families were watching me whenever a fire was in Big Sur, because I had the information that they needed and wanted, and they couldn't get any other way. So that's how it all started, and loving that I have something that meaningful to do with my life at this point that I can do from a wheelchair. And there's always something you can do from a wheelchair.
So this is about, this webinar, this Zoominar is about people, and each story is different. The big who is, we're going to be focusing on people who have disabilities, and you see there's various types of people of disabilities categories, and the difference between people with disabilities and those that have access and functional needs is actually that people with disabilities are protected under several laws in the United States, but the data shows that actually more than 20% of individuals who live in the United States have some kind of disability or other. The other group, we talk about access and functional needs, and many more people may not either have a disability or identify with someone as though they had a disability. And they're categorized now in the term access and functional needs. And this includes people on this slide: elderly, people who are ill or injured, have chronic health conditions, have all kinds of difficulties that interfere with their ability to access information or materials or function in various ways, people who are dependent on equipment or medications, don't have access to transportation, and then the many populations who are considered who may have limited understanding of the language of English, and may just be momentarily with access and functional needs or on a more chronic basis. So that's the who that we're talking about. And now I'm going to do a bit of a poll and ask you to respond to a couple of questions. Oh, my poll's inactive. I don't know why that is. I guess, Harvey, you may have my poll. Okay, never mind the poll. The questions that I had are, do you know somebody who has a disability? And I would imagine that many of you do. Do you know or care about somebody with a disability? Do you know or care about somebody who has access and functional needs? And do you feel that these individuals are adequately prepared? And what I was expecting we could show was that we all know or care about somebody who has a disability or access and functional needs, and that we don't necessarily think that they're probably well enough prepared for a disaster or even an emergency. So why are we doing this? Well, we do know some, why are we talking about this in more detail? Because there's a lot of reasons that people don't get prepared, particularly people who may have a disability or access and functional needs. And people have called this magical thinking, like somebody's going to come and help me. And in a disaster, as we've learned from the fires this year and with COVID, that's magical thinking, particularly right after an incident. That's not when emergency services is going to be able to come and get you. So if you're not prepared, you could definitely be in trouble. We all think we don't have the time. And none of us really want to think about it. And then a lot of people don't get prepared because they don't really know what they're supposed to do. And because it can be very overwhelming, obviously. So one of the things is that we have to understand where we are and what risks we're likely to face. And in Monterey County, we've had a good year to be reminded about all the risks we do face, and that the resources, again, that we're going to be sharing with you, you can find lots of resources in the Red Cross, and these are some listed there. And very specifically in Monterey County, the Office of Emergency Services website is now providing consistent information about what's going on with not only during the fires, but also with COVID. So knowing the risks of your region. And then again, this is not something that we don't know about now, that this year we're in the middle of many components of the disaster cycle. So we've had a crisis with fires. We've also have the COVID crisis, which is ongoing. There's a response to that crisis, and this is part of disaster preparedness. How are you going to respond to a crisis? And then right now we're very involved in, particularly with the fires, in the recovery issues. Mitigation means, living and learning from what you've experienced and preparing. So just being aware that in preparing for a disaster, for an emergency, that there's a cycle, and that not just leaving your home or being able to stay in place, but also how are you going to recover from the incident or incidents in this case. Another just comment about our disaster cycle is because of the electric grid issues that we are at risk at any time, that there may be some kind of risk of fire, wildfire, of not having access to electricity. So that's a big deal. So the what of it is in terms of resources, I'm pretty sure you all have heard this, but these resources are available. The Disaster Ready Guide in 7 different languages is available on the CERV website. There's resources available done by the Red Cross and also by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and many, many other resources available to people to learn about what to do and how to do it. Again, these resources some of these resources have been developed by the project that Harvey mentioned, and Monterey County is a part of that project. So the Listos California for All project has been funded by the state legislature and the governor, and Monterey County's played a big role in that, and there are 16 nonprofits involved in that. And this Disaster Ready Guide is really very well done. And also we have webinars that you can see on the CERV website. So that's, how do you do this? Now we're going to pivot a bit and look at a different kind of framework. And this is work that was originally done by June Kales, who's in Southern California, and she's been involved at a national and international level in disaster and preparedness and readiness. And the basic reason for the CMIS framework was to help identify specific functional needs that people have before, during, and after a disaster. So somewhere in the disaster cycle. And those areas are communication, maintaining health, independence, support and safety, and transportation. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. This I'm showing you because it's a intake form that the Red Cross has developed and is using, at least in some areas. These slides will be available to you, and this particular this link here will take you, and you can download this, as well as, of course, download it from the presentation, which you'll have access to all the slides a couple days after we're finished here. But the reason for the workshop is that it informs, I think it's an advocacy tool. So that it says under communication, what are the needs? This is, say, somebody's coming into a shelter from the Red Cross. What are your needs? Do you need access to communication help? Do you have a communication device? Do you need auxiliary communication equipment or interpreters? And then this is the advocacy part. Then there's what is the action that individual whose job it is to help you and support you, what do they need to do? Do they need to get you access to Braille or sign language or an oral interpreter, etc.? Same with maintaining health. So I think it's a really good tool for you to go through and say, or with individuals who have disabilities or access and functional needs, what are your needs under health, diet or medical supplies, under independence? Do you need ways for activities of daily living? What about a power source, etc.? Same with services, supports, and self-determination, and transportation. So this is just basically, I think it's a useful tool. It's a checklist, and it's an advocacy reminder for individuals, not just to say this is what you have to give me, because that's not necessarily true, but this is what you might want to think about in preparing yourself and people you care about for the next incident, which we all know will come.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you forgetting about? We're going to drill down a bit on each of these, and we've asked a couple of people to join us and to help us by sharing their own stories or their own thoughts about each of these categories. The first one is communication, and obviously, when we talk about communication, we have to get information. What's the point of communication? You need information, and you need a way to express yourself effectively with others. So without going into any details, because this is the material that you can access easily, you need access to information before, during, and after any kind of incident. And there are ways to get that, and there are ways that are accessible to to anybody. But if you don't know about them, then you could put yourself and your family in serious trouble. Communicating effectively with others. People have very different needs and barriers that might interfere with their communication. But the basics, make sure that somebody else can understand what you are trying to say or what your needs might be. Again, none of these, some people have only communication needs, but most of us have more than one of these areas around the CMIS framework to consider. So one of the things on the disaster readiness book that's available is very specific help on how to get access to alerts and information over time in terms of what's happening now and where, and what do I need to know about to take care of myself or take care of my family and my loved ones. And then the importance of staying in touch. And people don't always think about the fact that this phone they have and take with them everywhere may not be functioning because it doesn't have a battery. So think about battery, but also the cell phone towers may be down, and that you might not have access to all the ways you communicate and depend on, or know where your family members are. But if you make plans ahead, then your chances go up. And this slide with the SOS is a reminder, like Kate was saying, you really have to be flexible and resilient to problem solve some of these. So I'm going to introduce Susan now and ask her to make some comments. Susan's the Director of Educational Services at the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services in Fresno. She's also a important member of our CERV Listos project. And we've asked her to make a few comments. Susan is benefiting from our captioner because she is deaf, and but she's able to speak with us. So Susan, can I turn this over to you? And I will stop sharing, I think.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm going to go ahead and sign you because my co-worker, Crystal, is here also. She's fully deaf. So I'll go ahead and sign as well. But one area we're talking about is communication, and that's a big, big issue for people who are deaf. And I could honestly do a whole hour explaining everything, but I'm going to give you just some ideas of what you need to watch for if you're working with people who are deaf. They might be deaf where they have an ability to read English, like with the captioning here, but many of the deaf people that we work with, they grew up with American Sign Language. So they don't read English while it becomes a second language for them. So when you're in a situation with communication and you have to write, it's not always successful, can be very challenging. And then for them to be able to write back, also challenging. So again, the idea of sign language interpreter is very, very important. We also work with deaf with additional disabilities. They might be deaf-blind. We have a monthly support group at my office with deaf-blind. Some of them use what we call tactile interpreting. You actually interpret under their hand, you sign under their hand, and that's how they understand. So there's a lot of variety in communication. They might be deaf with mental health issues. They might be deaf with autism. And you can imagine how difficult it is to work with a hearing person with autism. Then you add deafness too. So it's just another added challenge. They will show me some of the equipment ideas for alerting. And I actually just ordered the radio, which kind of funny, radio, deaf can't hear the radio. But I told my deaf people, get the radio anyway, because you will be around hearing people. They can listen on the radio. They may not have what you do, but they had the radio that has the display that shows the word like tornado or whatever may be happening. But also it plugs into a shaker that you can put under your mattress. Think about deaf person during the night, they can't hear anything. Even I wear hearing aid, but at night take it off. So that way the bed will shake and wake them up so they can see what's going on. And it also has a flashing light. So another resource that deaf people can utilize. Also, I love the movie with Kate. But again, caption, where's the sign language, where's the interpreting? So actually, through the CERV program, my work picked another video on the CERV website, and we're going to add the interpreting. We can have someone sign what's being said and then embed that into the video so a person can watch the sign language. But there's just so many areas we need to consider. One friend of mine had to evacuate from fires that were in my Fresno area. She got no alert, she didn't know, but somebody else heard and texted her, let her know. So buddy system, very, very important. And then after the fact, she learned how to put the emergency alert on her phone. So that education is so important. So just many things to think about when you're considering people who are deaf and deaf with other disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. That's great. So our next, I'm going to go back to the slide because what we want to do now is invite you to use the chat. And we're going to do this for all these CMIST areas, but we want you to think about a challenge and a solution to that challenge. You may just give us a challenge or you may just give us a solution, but it's an opportunity for you all to share with us and us with you, like Susan has just done, some specific things that you think are really important for people who might have communication issues. And you obviously know they can be vastly different, but the impact of having a communication barrier, it can be the same, which it puts you at great risk in a disaster scenario. So please, everyone, use the chat. If you're going to put in a challenge, you might start with a C. Example, I've given you a couple of examples here, a lot of examples about what some of the challenges you or somebody you care about might be facing, or people that you work with, and then solutions. So we'll give a couple of minutes for you to type some things in, and then we'll try to share some of that. And the chat we're going to be definitely sharing as part of this Zoominar, so that all the things you think about and share, we will be able to share with others. So go. And so I see Linda's already bringing up a really important issue, which is the specific, it's not just linguistic, but cultural and multicultural components that define the way we communicate with one another are important. And one of the terms that we really like is cultural humility. So approaching it not as though you know, but with humility. And this is true for asking the individual or paying attention to the individual and how they might asking them what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, if that comes up. And then a solution, Jessica is telling us that her dispatch teams is assisted with communication needs when the rider's not able to speak English. And so that's a linguistic issue. Again, providing access, not able to speak English or other languages, and then if that's the case, use, punting. What are you going to do? Using pictures, writing, if that's available to somebody. Also, there's a lot of communication tools. People who aren't able to speak use communication boards and books. And Laura says, what about not processing or understanding what's going on? What are some strategies there? Which would be relevant too to somebody with dementia. And Erica's pointing out that there are translation charts. I mean, also we have Google Apps that are just getting amazing in terms of language differences, and other areas in terms of processing is sometimes modifying your own behavior a little bit by slowing down or looking around and asking if there's somebody that can help you communicate. So supports. All right. So really good thoughts that, as I say, it's very complicated, and as Susan was so helped us so much to understand is that how different everybody is, and how many solutions are available to people. So part of it is just reaching out and finding a resource to help somebody. But during a disaster is not the best time to do that, obviously. So we'll go on, and on the CMIS framework, maintaining health. Again, there's a lot of materials available about this. It's critical information. If there's a health issue, if you have allergies, if you take medications, there's no reason to think that even if you know what medications you're on, you're probably not going to know the dosages, and if you don't have some that you have available to you, that it may take a while to get them. So what are the pre-existing conditions you have? Do you have your insurance proof? And then basic things that relate to daily function, like your durable medical equipment or your assistive technology. Again, the electric grid is a big issue. So making sure you have batteries. There are a couple of Zoominars on the CERV website that specifically relate to health and communication passports, meaning what can you carry with you? What should you carry with you, so that people immediately know what the issues that you're facing are and how to help you. And one of these Zoominars has been in English, and another one is available in Spanish. So these are very helpful things that you can share with the people that you work with, or people that you know who might have a disability. And I'm going to punt here for Elsa. She was going to definitely take this part. So she had given it a lot of thought. And then, as Harvey mentioned, she has experienced a health issue herself quite suddenly. And she wants you to know, all to know, that she wishes she was here, but it's just not a good time. And so I said, well, what do you want people to know? And she said, well, play what if, think about the worst case scenario related to the health issues that you face, and think about what can you do, what will you do, what tools would you need, resources that you would need, and then also think about who can help me make that plan. So not doing this in by yourself or in a vacuum, that is that's going to make it harder for you. Also, it won't be any fun. But who can I work with to help make a plan in case of an emergency? And then she says, the bottom line is you got to get moving. You got to get a grip, put on your big girl and big boy pants, and keep moving forward and stay positive. And that's what she's in the business of doing right now. I wanted to bring to your attention another video. I'm not going to play it, but this is about a family impacted by the Soberanes fire. And it's a family of, there were 3 children and 2 adults, and the baby and the dad both have asthma. And their story during the fire and the tremendous impact, negative impact of that smoke for over many days, and the fact that mom and baby ended up in the hospital. So without really having a plan, that's what their message is, now we know better. We know a lot more about what we need to do to stay healthy, as well as get out of town and make sure you've got what you need, and what's going to happen to your food because there's no electricity. But living and learning, and I would recommend, if you're interested. And just another example of the variety of health concerns that can impact a family. So now again, we're hoping that you will share some thoughts about challenges that people might face that you hadn't thought about, or that you do think about all the time, in order to maintain their health during and after an incident. And again, thinking through the recovery phase, because I know that many people are, we're all in the middle of a COVID crisis, and so maintaining health is a real issue for that kind of disaster as well. So if you would type in the chat, and then we will also share that with others. And even include some more resources with some of the responses that we get. So what are the challenges that you're aware of that would impact somebody's health, and solutions that you've learned about?
Hello.
So Linda, tell us more about what you mean by building trust.
Well, when there are communication barriers, there can be misunderstandings. We read each other's body language differently. We don't have access to the body language we need to see because there's a mask. There's a language difference. There are all sorts of layers. But building trust first aids in communication. And my experience has been that sometimes when people have had repeated negative experiences in an area, they will find it difficult to believe or trust when someone comes forward with solutions. So, just taking that basic element into consideration before building or moving into conversation with that individual or suggesting the kit or the solution or the resources.
Thank you. And Lori says she's bringing out the fact that getting prescriptions in advance can be a big problem for individuals. And I know that it would be important to have ample supplies in your bag, your emergency kit, your stay-at-home box. And then the question is how do you make that happen? And it depends, of course, on insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Anything else? One of the issues I know that's been a problem often is people who have chronic conditions that require dialysis or that are in the middle of a chemotherapy regime after the event has occurred, and making sure that they can continue to access what they need and given the circumstances. So that again, that would go into in some cases transportation issues. Any other thoughts here? Okay, thank you, Linda and Laurie. Alessia, can ask a doctor for extras for your emergency bag. Yes, because you'll need that doctor's prescription. And depending on the insurance, it's easy or not so easy to get extras. And it's a good thing to, if you have medical issues, to be communicating with your doctor specifically about anything special that you might need to take into consideration or that you might need to put on your health passport to make sure that your needs are communicated accurately and quickly to first responders. All right, thanks for that. Now we're going to move to independence. And I'll just start by sharing something that happened in one of the recent fires. CERV manages basically a website that's available to any community in the world called recovers.org. And there's a Monterey co.recovers.org site. And during the fires, we had people coming on, and this was true with Soberanas fire as well. And we were able to meet almost everybody's needs. And one of the needs that, and this can be seen by multiple organizations. So it's not just CERV, it's the Red Cross and many other organizations are looking at the needs and able to respond. So we had a request for a shower chair, and this was a woman that had to evacuate, and she said, I could be fine, but I can't bathe. And that's a real problem for me because I can't bathe without a shower chair. And so something as simple as that, you don't even think about, how your hygiene, or do you need help getting dressed or eating? Is it hard for you to be in a crowd or to be alone, et cetera, which is, we're all finding out all about that now. But what could interfere with your independence? Things we take for granted that allow us to be independent. And that again, this is in the slides here, you know, this is a woman in a wheelchair near an elevator. And in some disaster situations, they're going to shut down the elevator. So if that hasn't been thought about, that's a real problem. That happened in the World Trade Center incident. Also transportation, getting people out of areas. And there have been some big problems in California, but not in our county. We have a fairly robust system of transportation that can help evacuate people and or take them to, as Jessica was saying, to appointments. But it's a matter about thinking about what could the problems be and then solving them. So guess what comes next? I want to introduce Margaret Keith. She's not here, but I definitely interviewed her. Margaret is at CSUMB and is the Director of Student Disability Resources. She's has a lot of experience, a lot of great ideas. And so I said personally to her, so what comes to mind when you think about what you need? She uses a wheelchair. And you know, what would you say to people? And she said, well, you got to do it. You just got to do it. You got to think about this. So she has a backup battery charger in a minivan with her go bag. She has a list of meds and disability maintenance needs. She has support persons with her phone numbers in case she would get separated or in a situation where she can't advocate for herself. She's all over emergency alerts, and she's all over having a go bag, not just in her home, but in her van and in her place of work. So you don't know where you're going to be when. And then she said something that I think most of us don't think about. And this is, she has a service dog. And she said it's really important to train your service dog because, and this would include emotional support animals as well, because many people won't leave their animals in a disaster situation. And it's very hard if you're uptight, she says, and very nervous to convince your dog to get into a cage because they're going to think they're going to the vet or something. So she said to train them that they're getting into the cage and there's going to be great food in the cage and a comfy blanket or whatever. But I had never thought about that. And so the importance of taking the dog, and that people who are in your family that you care about, including our animals, there has to be some preparation for them in advance, or it's not going to go well. So I thought that was really great advice, and I thank you, Margaret. So next, it's your turn again. What thoughts do you have that you think might be interfering with independence in terms of people that you're working with yourself, or people that are in your family or friends that you care about? Mm. Yeah, not being able to move fast. And what might be a solution for that? Would you have would there be a support person that could help you? and transportation, definitely. So having access to transportation is definitely a big issue. And again, I think that in our mitigation period and our preparation period in the county, that's being discussed, and ways to find and get at people who need transportation help during an incident. Listening to the myths or friends who are uninformed on the matter. Okay. Finding if there is equipment able to move the person from point A to point B. Yeah, and it's that's really critical, because there are ways to get people from point A to point B, and they need to be available and they need to be practiced. And I realize we're going to go over, and I hope you'll hang with us a little bit longer. It won't be much longer. We're going to shift now to looking at the issues surrounding safety and support. Planning for individuals who may have difficulty in unfamiliar or chaotic environments. Also, making sure that, again, as we were saying, that you can practice and plan for different kinds of scenarios, playing what if, as Elsa said, what if this happened, what am I going to do? And then considering that if you're out of your home or in your home, that you may need to be engaged or entertained, and you may need comfort items. So making sure that you're not overlooking things like that. So many people with disabilities, access and functional needs do have people who support them. We all have people who support us. We're going to hear about some tags that can help people who may not be able to communicate very well. I think the big message with this is the drilling, the practicing, that the first time that an event occurs should not be the first time that somebody's had to go through a practice, a drill, basically. It happens all the time in schools, and it should be happening everywhere, including in each of our homes. So I'm going to turn this over to Lori and Aaron now. Lori's the Executive Director of Special Kids Connect, and Aaron is the co-founder of a nonprofit, If I Need Help. Go for it.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everybody. My name is Lori Luzader. I'm the Executive Director of Special Kids Connect. We develop resources, raise awareness, and provide support to children with disabilities in Monterey County. There are over 10,000 children that have some sort of a disability here in our county. And one of the major groups that we support are individuals who have children or family members with autism. And having a family member with autism presents a unique set of challenges in a disaster or in an emergency situation. And so I'm very proud today to introduce a dear friend of mine and somebody who we have worked closely with, certainly over the last year, in helping get our families prepared for an emergency. Erin Wilson is the co-founder with her husband, Bruce, of ifineedhelp.org. They are an organization that provides emergency tags for individuals who have communication needs. And I'd like to introduce you to Erin and ask if Erin might be able to share with us some of the things that you think about when you think of an emergency situation. Erin, you have an adult son. I believe Jay is 18, a very handsome young man. And I know that you've been in some scary situations with him in the past, and we'd love to hear about what you think about and what families in general think about when they have a child with autism.
Well, it doesn't necessarily just have to be an emergency thing. Any moment he could just run into the street. You know, he lacks safety awareness and he has poor communication. And when he was young, he bolted a lot. He eloped or wandered off. And that's why we started our foundation. And so I'm always alert and watching him. And so the story I wanted to share is last year, my 50th birthday party, we had a big backyard party with a band, and I had a babysitter for him. And when the party was over and the band was leaving through the side gate, I'm always alert to where Jay is. And even though I was in the other part of the yard talking to some friends, I saw him look towards where the gate was. And in that split second, I could see it in his eye and that he was going to be gone. So we both started sprinting at the same moment. And by the time I got to him, he was in the middle of the street. Thank God there was no cars coming. So you always, even even at a party or wherever, it could be an emergency. You always have to be alert that he could be bolting.
Awesome. And Erin, I think the other thing that I like to let families know about is transitions are very difficult for autism. And so suddenly if he was put into a shelter situation, or if he had to quickly go from one area to another, that would cause him some stress.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm realizing about him and his critical thinking that he doesn't quite grasp that like just like clean and dirty, like that you would put the dishes in the dishwasher and then take them out. He still like puts the the dirty dishwasher clean on top of the clean, or he'll take a dirty dish and put it in the cupboard. Like he understands like the steps, the sequences, but not the critical thinking behind it. And I think if we went to a shelter, since he wouldn't already know some sequences of how to behave in there, it would be a really difficult situation for him. I hope that made sense.
Thanks, Erin.
It sure does. And I'll tell you, I have a great photo, which I'll show at the end, of just what a shelter can look like and how awful that can be for somebody, for many of us, but especially for somebody who's, as you say, critical thinking. I can't put this together. What is happening? Thank you, Erin. Thank you. That was great. And thank you, Lori. And we'll be sharing at the end that they have Erin and Bruce have a foundation, and they have some great materials available to people. And so this is just a kind of a hint about the kinds of things. And as you can see, there's a telltale sign there, and it can be extremely helpful. We're Harvey and I are CERT members, and we've been called out to look for children that are lost. And it would have been great if they had most of them had autism, and it'd been great if they'd had that. So thank you so much. So safety and support issues, anything that people want to mention? And I know that dementia's come up a couple times, and the other group of individuals we tend to be called out on to see if we can't locate them are people who have dementia or Alzheimer's disease. So any other thoughts people have or good ideas? All right, well, I'm going to go on because, but don't hesitate to put them in, because we will definitely be using them and sharing them as part of this presentation. So the last part of the CMIST is transportation. This is a big issue when you're having to evacuate, as we've learned too many times this summer and fall with the fires. The questions that we get mostly on the Recovers website is, you know, where can I go? And will there be what I need where I go? And of course, sheltering in conjugate settings was not a good option at all this year. So planning beyond what you think, what everybody thinks is going to happen to, again, as Kate said at the very beginning, being resilient and creative about solving the problems that might come up. It's important for people to know that you're there, and for you to have considered how or who will come and get you. And we've already talked about the questions of transportation related to chemo and dialysis and other medical attention that might be needed. And right after a fire, there's a lot of resources available to, or right after a big incident, there are a lot of resources available and at evacuation centers that you can access, or at least try to access. And I know that the Red Cross and the County Office of Emergency Services tries to meet all those needs, not always successfully, but the effort is definitely there. So I'm now going to introduce Jessica McKillop. She's the executive director of another one of the nonprofits we've been working with on this grant. And she's going to tell us a little bit about issues that she's learned about in terms of transportation, because that's really what they try to do. They work with, well, I'll let her tell you. Go ahead, Jessica.
Thank you so much, everyone, for including us, and Sarah for the introduction. Some of you may know Independent Transportation Network Monterey County is a member-based nonprofit that provides rides 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And during the last year as a subgrantee, our disaster preparedness efforts have really expanded beyond our normal service scope. We've partnered with MST and Meals on Wheels in delivering lunches while seniors were sheltering in place at home, as well as giving out PPE equipment, masks, and disaster guides and things of that nature. When the fires took place, we mobilized with volunteers and offered to get residents out of their homes, both on River Road and in Carmel at the senior facility there. And really a lot of it comes down to kind of some of those other key pieces within the CMIST model, and it's communication. Obviously our model is to prepare for transportation needs and plan in advance, but in a disaster or an emergency situation, that's not always possible. So being able to mobilize in a short time period, relying on volunteers who are able and available to jump in their car and go lend a helping hand has been extremely vital. But getting them to support our efforts and really understand what some of our policies and expectations are when it comes to disaster and transporting people has been, kind of pivotal. So we've done a lot of training, we've done a lot of education, we've done a lot of follow-up, both with riders and drivers to ensure that everyone kind of understands the overall importance and safety. So I always say it's beautiful to make a plan, but at the same time, we've got to be ready to pivot in a time of challenge or emergency to make sure that we're accommodating those needs of the community at whole.
That's great. And I noticed that Joanne says that she's indicating that hospice actually transported a homebound bedridden patient. And again, you don't know what point in your life you're going to be when something happens or when someone you care about. So having your plans are constantly changing with everybody's where they are in their life, and then also with what the resources are available. But that's great to hear about, Joanne. And I know that Allison, who's been doing all the captioning for us, would like to hear some ideas for individuals who with dementia, not just for transportation, but she is, I don't think she'd mind if I shared with you that her mother has early Alzheimer's. And so she's very interested in that. And so any ideas about that, if you put that in the chat, you'll be sharing with a wonderful person who's now thinking about all of this because she's captioning for us and is wonderful. And any, in addition to that, if any of you have other thoughts about solutions for transportation or challenges that people have faced. And Jessica's shared that MST was also able to assist in evacuations. Yeah, it's a county-wide challenge to get people who need to be out of where they are, to alert them and then to be able to transport them, and also so that they are willing to leave, as has been often noticed in terms of not leaving pets or animals. And in our county, we're lucky because the SPCA will take pets. And Jessica, thanks for sharing with Allison about the Alzheimer's Association. We had a very good presentation on the access and functional needs webinar call or meeting, Zoom meeting, from somebody from the Alzheimer's Association that we can share with her as well. So keep on keeping on there. So this is the you can't predict, but you can prepare. Okay, so most of us don't think a shelter is going to look like this, and in most cases it's not. But you don't know in a disaster situation what's going to happen. So you do know in a typical time when it's not COVID that if you have to leave, you have to get out, that you're going to a shelter, that you're going to sign in. And that's why I would also suggest you take a look at that CMIST intake form that the Red Cross uses, because I do think there's a lot of information there that will help you think and help people who you care about think about what their needs might be, and not expect that they're going to be all met at a Red Cross shelter, but that if they prepare in advance, they're more likely to be ready and prepared. And then just how noisy I hear from colleagues in the Red Cross, how noisy it can be in a shelter, how scary it can be for some parents of children, because if the kids are running off, I mean, it would be hard to find somebody. So again, I think it's related to what Elsa said is, think about what if you're going to have to shelter in place? What are the issues going to be? What if you don't have access to a shower chair? How are you going to deal with that? Realizing that a lot of people want to help, but it's not always easy to find people who need help at the time when they need help. So we're all learning. This is kind of the last statement, but I want to, there's a really nice video that I would recommend that you see. that would help. It's focused on people with disabilities and access and functional needs. It's captioned, it's in sign, and it does provide insight into people who have lots of different challenges, including being very young, homeless, having mental illness, et cetera, et cetera. So having access and functional needs as well. And it's a nice, friendly video about that that we were going to end with, but instead, I think we will end with thanking you all for coming and for participating, and reminding you that there are lots of resources that can look at in different ways with a different model. Very important to do the kit, to practice, and to be creative. And then I promised that I would show the materials that that Erin and Bruce have in their great nonprofit. And so here's that information. Also resources for the videos we've talked about. And finally, just a new kind of thing that's a text-based course that is designed specifically for people who have difficulty talking, and that we're the United States Society for Augmentative and Alternative Communication is just rolling that out. So new things are happening all the time that are meant to matter. Here's all the contact information for people who participated and did some planning for us, to thank them, and so that you know and you can find all of us. And then I thought I would end with just a list of all the subgrantees that have been participating in this project, all of whom represent people who have disabilities, access, and functional needs, and represent the most vulnerable populations in our county. And so thanks to all of them as well. And now anybody is totally welcome to stay on, and we can continue for as long as you want, and have more conversations. And you can unmute yourself now. So did I get your email wrong, Susan? Okay, I'll fix that. Any comments or questions or thoughts?
I have a quick comment. So actually, the family member that was moved by hospice went from a home environment, even though bed bound, to a total isolation where there was no family or anyone could come visit. And that was really difficult for the patient as well as the family. Just going from, people that cared for her to an isolated situation where, the nurse or whatever would come in periodically. It was quite a dramatic difference for that person.
Yeah, and that certainly is the story we hear over and over and over again in our conjugate living center with people who are separated from their families, and also people in the hospital who are separated from their families. Yeah. So we've had fire. We've had four fires this summer, and we've had COVID for 9 months, and that's not ending. So we have to put on our big boy and big girl panties. Yes. And keep putting them on. Yeah. Erin, do you want to say more about the kinds of things you have available? I'm sure people would be interested.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. Well, as I said, Jay was a runner and he got lost a few times. So we wanted a way to let people know he's somebody who has special needs and, his information. So that's why we created wearable IDs. And we also have other things like, we've been doing this 8-9 years and, families say, oh, what about this or that? So we've added a lot to the product line, like including that street sign. Since COVID started, a lot of people are buying those so that their neighbors would know what's going on, why there's somebody in their house screaming a lot. And we also became vendors with the regional centers. We're vendors with San Andreas Regional Center for safety ID kits. And we also added the emergency Q&A where you can go in and answer these questions and then print it out and keep it available in case of an emergency. Because as you were saying, people are too frantic during the emergency. So this would give them the answers already or they can print it out and show it to them, or they can email it to them. And we also added a neighbor alert where you can, it's like a flyer and you could show it to your neighbor. So if they ever see your loved one out lost, you might not even know he wandered out yet. And so they would see him and say, oh, let me call your mom or your daughter and take you home. So we've tried to approach it at a lot of different angles. Yeah.
That's great. I think I messed up your email too, Erin, right?
I think Lori said
so that's why I'm not letting this out until after I fix the problems. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in here really quick because I think Erin's underselling herself a little bit, because the wearable IDs are QR codes. And the really wonderful thing about them is that they can be used for anybody that has a risk of not being able to communicate their needs. So when Allison was talking about somebody with dementia, if they suddenly became disoriented or were wandering, the QR code is so prominent that it would prompt a emergency personnel to scan that QR code. And then when you scan the code, you get all this information, like if the person has dementia, where they live, who to call, if there's medication that person needs to be taking. I really think that, I will say this, that if that technology was around when my daughter was little and she doesn't have special needs, I probably would have gotten her a shoe tag just for peace of mind if something had happened in an emergency situation, so somebody would have been able to contact me. So I think that that what she's done is a really neat thing. And the San Andreas Regional Center has partnered with her so that all of the regional center clients can get that kit for free. So that is a pretty amazing thing.
Thank you, Lori. And yeah, we're getting more people that have that are medically fragile now, or have epilepsy or dementia. So autism's because it was my son and all that, but now it's started to branch out to other circles.
Hi, Sandra.
You know what? I also believe that Erin is a very good way also for the deaf. If they have it, it will be like a blessing, really, because if the other side of the person is not able to communicate with a deaf person, then they can actually scan it and they would immediately know, oh, this is a deaf person. So then they would have the ability or the opportunity to change their communication and think of ways, at that quick second, think, okay, how can I help this deaf person in a safer area, protect them. And I think that is a wonderful idea to throw it out there, because I've noticed that sometimes our friends or hard of hearing, relative friends or parents, they don't understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. And having that thing that you can scan it, that helps a lot, not only for the person who's caring for them, their daughter or their son, but also, you know, the next door neighbor person will understand, oh, she doesn't understand, or am I supposed to like talk loud, or, because that's scary. In the moment of an emergency, you know, all these things, your head doesn't process, you know, fast enough.
Right.
So it's a good idea. It's a good idea that you invented that idea and put it out there. Now it can be used for the deaf community to support them more in case of an emergency.
Great.
Yeah, I want to point out, you know, we're a nonprofit and our membership is free at ifineedhelp.org. So you could do the free sign up and then use all those things I talked about. And you can even print out your own code and you could tape it, you know, to the back of your phone or wherever. And that's free to you. Uh-huh.
It's great.
Thank you. I like to think ahead of, you know, the emergencies that we have, because you never know what can happen, you know, especially with the COVID-19. It's a mental thing, and people are getting so frustrated with the situation.
Yep.
So that also can help now to just spread the information. You know, you don't have to panic, feel afraid, you know, just point to your shoe or point to whatever you have, and that will ease the person to a calmer state. And we can always support it like that.
Erin, do you so when your son has this, does he know what it means and what he can do? Like Sandra was just saying, you could point to, but I'm wondering if, because that could be part of, I mean, that could be a training thing, that a drill and kind of thing that you could do. But I'm wondering if you've done that or you know of people that do that.
Yeah, we told him we made this for him, that we love him so much. And during an IEP, which is a meeting with the school district and all the specialists there, he was he came through the room and, you know, he kind of shrieks and runs around. And I said, Jay, what do you do if you get lost? He stopped. He pointed to his patch on his shirt and he said, scan, you know, so we trained him to do that. And all the speech therapists and everybody's like, ooh.
But I think that's a really good point in terms of the practicing. You have a plan, but you've got to include the person in that plan, no matter who they are. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a woman that purchased some things for her daughters. The daughter is an adult who is blind, and they were going to navigate through an airport to go somewhere. And when the mom gave the daughter the shirt with the patch on it, the daughter cried because she was having so much anxiety about navigating the airport, and that she actually had something on her that would help her if she did get lost. Yeah, she was very touched by that.
That's great. All right. Any other final words, thoughts?
Sarah, thank you for pulling this together. And Allison, I'm so sorry that I talk so fast. But I think that it's really important for all of us to come together and to recognize that the world that we work in, we sometimes tend to think and frame everything from a disaster preparedness perspective for the constituency that we serve. So it's really nice for us to be able to listen to how other people are handling and managing and navigating a system, and what supports are out there for others. So I'm very appreciative that you did this.
Well, I'm very appreciative that everybody participated. And if I had to do it again, which I'm not really up for, but if I were to do it again, I just think the CMIST framework is something that makes it easier to talk about how important it is to think of function and how you might lose function and lose access to who you even are in a disaster, and how you can maintain that and feel that you can.
Mhm.
That it's not, you're not completely without control, that if you can do things that can matter. Yeah. And focus on it that way rather than build a kit, which is important too. All right, go ahead,
But
Sandra.
I think the way we all experienced COVID-19, the first time of our lockdown, that was really bad. I mean, I noticed because I cared for my mother who's 82 years old, and she was going crazy. I need to go to the store. I said, hold on, breathe. It's a mental thing. And that's what we have to remember. We got to prepare mentally. We don't know what type of disaster, but as long as we know how we're going to confront it. And I think helping, having a group like this not only helps us to know what agencies are out there, especially for the ones that don't hear, like the deaf. I think they can take advantage of calming down, realizing, okay, well, you have a support from the hearing community. Once we all come together, I think we kind of calm down and we know our special resources that are available to each one of us. It doesn't matter our communication strategies must be clear enough to every sector of our community. And I think this has been one of the best that I've gone to, because it shows that we're coming together. And we're coming together and becoming a stronger community, not only as hearing people, but also involving the deaf. And I think the deaf would really appreciate all the agencies that are out there available for them, that they can take the opportunity to learn, to become stronger mentally and be able, because we don't know how long COVID-19 will be.
That's right.
So unfortunately, we don't know. And so now is the time, to calm down, put the whole puzzle together. And these agencies have really, so thank you very much for planning it, organizing it perfectly and at the right time. I appreciate that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Allison. Once again. All right. So we will, we've recorded this, so the recording will be available. I'm going to take the chat and kind of organize it so that those ideas that people have shared will be available. And we'll also have what do they call it? A slide deck. So the slides will be available, and we will be posting that on the CERV website for anybody to use anytime. All right. Thank you. Harvey, do you have anything you want to say? You're muted. You're muted. I kicked him out of the room. So he's on a different computer.
I'm on her other computer.
That's
But
why
thanks
he's Sarah
everybody for
Blackstone.
joining. And we'll send a note to everybody that we have an email for about the availability of all these things that Sarah's talking about.
All right.
So
Take
enjoy
care.
the rest of the week. Don't work too hard. Bye.
Thanks again, everybody. Bye-bye. All right, it's just us. All right, I want to share. I want to.
Iris.
Hey. God. Yeah. All right, Allison, you're done.
I'm done. I'm sending you the captions now.
Okay.
Let's never let Lori talk again. No,
I
I'm
know.
just
Thank you,
Oh, man.
Allison.
Hey, no problem.
I
guys have
hope
a good
you,
night.
I hope that you keep feeling better. And I just want to ask you about your drugs. Did you get a new prescription or anything?
I did not. I'm done. I'm done with my
Okay.
prescription. I just stuck it out.
Yeah. And how's your leg?
It's better. It was my foot more than anything, but it was freaking me out last night because my big toe started itching again. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Huh.
So, but anyways, I think I'm fine now. It's just been, God, I told Sean today, I talked to him and I was like, listen, because I've had a few different health issues going on.